Hello, and thanks for watching Tim Talks Tabletop, the show where I talk about different board games in my collection. And today I'm going to be talking about Cosmic Encounter. It says a game of infinite possibilities, and that could very well be true. It recommends 3 to 5 players, but I would say try and stick to 4 or 5 if you can, because it's more fun with more people. Cosmic Encounters is a competitive game where you are an alien race trying to establish colonies on other planets. And in order to do that, you have different encounters with the other players. It's quite a simple game in its structure, but the game changes every time you play, as each alien race you can play as has completely different rules which affect the game. So depending on the combination of aliens you're playing with, it completely changes the landscape of the game, giving this game a huge amount of replayability. And that's why it's a must-have in your collection and one of my favourites. Well, let's have a closer look at what you get inside Cosmic Encounter and some of the components that come with the game. Right, so let's have a closer look at what you get inside the box of Cosmic Encounter. It's quite a decent sized box, it will look good up on your shelf with your other games. It has a fairly hefty rulebook. There's quite a lot involved in the setup of the game, and the different phases and all the different scenarios that you can encounter throughout the game and how to resolve them. So don't let the rulebook intimidate you. Although there's a lot of rules to the game, at its core it's quite straightforward. The turns are quite quick. It's quite a snappy game that you can get around the table quickly. After a few turns you generally get the gist of it and figure it out. But there's just lots of different outcomes and scenarios that can occur, and there's different rules and different ways of resolving them. So it does take a little bit of time to pick up, but it's definitely worth it because it is a really fun game. So here's some of the components you get. This is the score tracker of how many colonies you've established. So as you establish colonies on other planets, you'll go up, and if you lose any colonies, it will go back down again. And it's the first player to 5 colonies that wins the game. You can actually have joint victories as well. So if you have a joint victory, if both players attack at the same time, if you have an attacking player ask for an alliance, then you can win at the same time. But as these games tend to go on for a while, as you win and lose colonies, you may find a lot of players aren't willing to settle for a joint victory, and the game will continue. Or maybe that's just the people I play with. Here are all different planets. So each player has the planets for their colony and alien race out on the table, and then you get your different ships. So there's different ships for each player, and I've also kept the score counter there as well. So you have your score counters slotted in nicely there on the table, indicating who's at what score. And the good thing about these ships that establish your colonies, they stack on top of each other. So you can stack them up and have your little colonies spread up on the planet. So we'll set up a game in a moment and show you what that all looks like. This is the warp gate. It indicates where you're attacking. So if you're attacking someone, point it towards them, put in your ships as who you want to attack. We'll go through an example turn in a bit. It's just looking at some of the tokens. There's some other tokens here for some of the different rules of the advanced games. And the longevity of this game is fantastic because there's sort of an introductory level, and then you can add different game elements in. These are quite cool. These are the what are called flare cards. So these go into the game based on the aliens you're playing as. You establish what aliens you're playing as, and then you take the card for that alien and you shuffle it into the main deck. Now there's an ability you can use with the card, but if you're actually playing as the alien race the card represents, you get a super ability, which really gives you a big advantage. You can get hold of that card. It can really sort of change the tides of the game quite well. So that's quite a fun element to include. You then also have some tech cards. So the tech cards are don't have to be included. You can add them at a later stage if you're having a follow-up game, want to make it a bit more advanced. You get tech cards, so you can sort of, when you're establishing where your colonies are, you can put some to one side to spend resources on developing new tools, and you get these extra abilities and stuff you can play with. But that's for if you're having a more advanced game. This is the Destiny deck. So the interesting thing about this game is when it's your turn, you don't choose who you're having the encounter with, you draw a card. So if you were to draw a card and say, draw red, I would have an encounter with a red player. If I am the red player, I can actually then use that turn to drive colonies away from my planets, which is what can cause the game to go on for a bit longer, because you're gaining new colonies and destroying colonies of other players, and that's why it can go very back and forth and be quite a competitive game. But that's all part of the fun. So that's the Destiny deck, and then these are the encounter cards. So I'll go through a setup game and show that in a bit more detail, but the different encounter cards are generally just attacks that show you the attack value. So players put down attack cards to increase their attack power. You can then have reinforcements, which gives you additional attacks later after the card's been resolved. So different artifacts in here as well with different abilities, and you also get the negotiate cards. So negotiate is quite a cool feature. If both players negotiate, then you could have a set amount of time to come to an agreement. That could be allowing each other to have a colony, or trading cards, or trading ships, whatever is allowed within the game that you can trade. And if you can't come to an agreement, then there are penalties for failing to negotiate. If one player negotiates and the other attacks, then they establish a colony or successfully defend, but then there's compensation. Again, lots of different rules in this game. You don't draw cards at the end of your turn. So in order to get more cards, you either draw a new hand when you run out, or you can get cards as compensation, or you get cards from helping other players defend, and things like that. So different means and ways of getting your cards in, which just makes it a bit more interesting. I think that's quite fun. There's quite a few fun elements there. And last but not least, this is the huge stack of alien cards, and it's absolutely amazing. You've got all of these different cards. You will only play with one card each per player, and as you can see, there are absolutely loads. They're quite it's quite easy because they're colour coded. So all the green cards are for like your first game. Your yellow cards are then for a slightly more advanced game, and then your red cards is for like your expert players. I mean, look how many there are of these. How many combinations of these cards could you have in any single game? I've certainly not played with all of them, and there are expansions to get, which look really cool as well. Let's give you an example card, shall we? Let's just look at one like this one here. So I'll pop one up on the screen for you there so you can see that. So Zombie, you have the power of immortality. Whenever you should lose ships to the warp, use this power instead to return them to any of your colonies and just keep using them. So you don't lose any ships. So that's a really powerful one. In addition, you may free any player's ships from the warp back to any colonies he or she has as part of a deal. So that means it's a good thing for you to offer somebody in a negotiation. So right, you can, if I can establish a colony on your planet, I will allow you to take your ships back from the warp and get your things back. So that puts you in a good negotiation point. There are quite a few different ones here. I won't go through all of them, but there are some cool ones. This one is the Macron. I'll put that up on the screen as well. You have the power of mass. When you are the offensive, when you're on the offense, use this power before launching ships into encounter. When you are an ally, use this power after allies are invited. If you are the offense or an ally, you may only send in one ship into the encounter. So that was probably a bit unnecessary to go through. Let's get to the core of it. As the main player or ally, use this power after encounter cards are revealed. Each of your ships adds 4 to your side total into the encounter instead of 1. When you're collecting compensation or rewards, each of your ships is worth 2 ships. So basically, the ships are more powerful. That probably would be a lot quicker just to read that last bit than read the other thing. Yeah, it's really cool. Each of these different ones I've got here. Like this one's a good one. Loser. You have the power of upset. As the main player before an encounter cards are selected, you may use this power. This power to use to declare an upset. Once an upset has been declared, both main players must play attack cards if possible. And after cards are revealed, the winning side loses and the losing side wins. This occurs after all other game effects are resolved. So the reason that's a cool one is in your hand, if you have high attack cards and low attack cards, it basically means that your entire hand is useful. Because if you've only got low score cards, you use your power, say, right, the losing player wins, you put down the lowest card for the encounter, and you've got more chance of winning then. Whereas if you only have high attack cards in there, don't use the power, go for the high ones. I believe the flare card for this allows you to declare your power after your cards have been selected. So you see that's why that would be a really good card to get if you are this alien, because that can really stitch up the other player. I could keep going. There's loads of really good ones. I'll do one more. The Parasite. You have the power to infest, and that's specifically prevented by another game effect. When it is your turn to ally, you may use this power to ally with one side in an encounter as if you had been invited even when you are not. So a key point there is when you are attacking or defending, you have to actually ask for alliances. So if early in the game, if I'm attacking a planet, say, right, I'm more likely to win if I bring another player along with me. If that player comes along with me, they will establish a colony as well. Now, earlier in the game, that's not going to bother me too much, and I'm more likely to establish a colony if I'm making alliances. But towards the end of the game, I might say, no, I don't want any alliances because I want that solo victory. Whereas a Parasite player, you don't need to ask for their assistance. They just hijack on and join the encounter. So that's quite a cool one. I mean, that is just a handful. Huge stack of these cards. It's fantastic. So let's have a closer look at a setup game. I've kind of danced around the rules a little bit. Let's go through what a standard turn looks like, and I'll explain a little bit more about how the game is played. Okay, so here's a setup game of Cosmic Encounter. As you can see, it's quite a busy table with quite a lot going on. So once you've set up, everyone has their alien cards face down. Face up, I should say. So everyone can see revealed who's playing with what, and they have a little reminder of what they do written upside down at the top of the cards, so other players can see. So you can remember who's got what. So there's a few different ones. I've just put out a few examples here. This one is one where, as the main player, before an encounter, you can use this power to force your opponent to play his or her encounter card face up. Only after you've seen your opponent's card do you select to play your card. So that's really powerful, but if you then think about what other people's powers could be, some players have the ability to decide after you've chosen cards whether it's the winner or loser, as we looked at before. There's also one that mirrors. So if you're playing with, say, 13, you flip the numbers, it becomes 31. So even knowing what the other player has put down, it then becomes a game of double guessing and bluffing as to what you think your opponent's going to do. So each encounter can kind of have different effects. Along the bottom of the card it shows you the turn order, and it also highlights then what phase of the turn order your ability is. So I'll pop one of those up on the screen there, so you can see it goes to start. So to start with the turn, you regroup. When you regroup, you can return any ships you've had destroyed from the warp. You get one ship. So you get one ship back from the warp at the start of your turn, unless you have an ability that allows you to do more. Then it's destiny, so you draw a destiny card. So it goes to the red, so let's say it's the yellow player's turn. They will point to the red planet because they've selected that one. Then it's the launch phase, the yellow player will choose. Now you can take ships from any of your colonies. Obviously I've set them up at the moment, it's all in their starting planets, but let's say I've got some colonies established elsewhere. I can take ships from multiple different colonies, so I'm spreading them out a bit more. Let's see, so I'll take maybe a couple from there, and I'll put them, not in the warp, sorry, put them in the encounter gate. So they'll go in there, and then they'll defend against this planet. And that is then your encounter. As a defending player, I can't move ships around, I'll leave them in there. But the next phase is then alliances. So the attacking player can say, I would like alliances. So let's say the blue player chooses to help. They can then choose how many ships. They could just chuck in one. They could chuck in all four. They can, again, take ones from different colonies, make sure you only need one ship to be an established colony on a planet. So they might choose to put one in. Then somebody might choose to come along and help in an alliance. So the benefit of the attack is obviously if you win the encounter, you establish a colony on that planet. If you lose that encounter, your ships all go to the warp. So you are risking your ships in that. If you think the person's going to win and they offer, you can always offer to help. If you are defending and you win, you can either take ships back from the warp or get extra cards. Because again, you don't draw cards at the start of your turn. Again, if you lose your ships. So there's risk and reward for both. You may find at the start of the game, lots of people are willing to do alliances. As the game goes on, people are less likely. It's always beneficial to you to help out. But grudges may start to form throughout the game, and it does go on for a while. That's then the planning phase, which is where you will put down what card you're going to do. So let's say player one player puts that, one player puts that down. Then it's the reveal phase. You reveal how many cards you have. So this person's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, plus 6, so they've got 11. This one's got 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So the defending player will win, but then you can chuck down reinforcement cards and add on top. Then you get the flair cards, you get the tech cards. Lots of other cards can then be played to continue the encounter, but in its base it is who has the highest number wins. And there's things that happen in the event of a draw. You then have the negotiate cards and all sorts of different things there that happen. So the fun thing about this game is the amount of different things that can happen based on the combination of the aliens, the tech cards, who's having alliances with who. There's really a lot of different outcomes. Hence what it says in the box, it's a game of infinite possibilities. Who knows? I mean, looking at this stack of cards you can get, it's outstanding how many different cards you can play with. And then it's fun for the different scenarios that come up, and you think about the narrative of the game and what's happening. And one of my favourite endings to this game that I've played was with this one. So we all were playing the game. We all had quite interesting abilities with our aliens. This alien says, I'll pop it up on the screen, you have the power to crash land. As the offence, when you lose an encounter, if both players revealed attack cards and you lost the encounter by 10 or more, you may use this power to land one of your ships that would otherwise be lost to the warp on the winning defensive planet. The ships coexist with the planet's ships already there. This does not allow you to coexist in places with aliens that state otherwise. And that's some aliens don't allow you to coexist. But if you lose the encounter by 10 or more, you still establish a colony with one ship that's crash landed. Now, in the game that I played, we must have been playing for well over an hour, possibly an hour and a half, back and forth, gaining colonies, losing colonies. This ability did not come up at all. So a bit of an impromptu transition there. Had a bit of an issue with the recording, had to cut it a bit short there. So apologies for that. But I was just about to move on to my final thoughts on Cosmic Encounter. I will first finish the short story about the crash landing. So we were having a game. We all had different abilities that were being used quite regularly throughout the game on every encounter, and one player whose ability just never really came up. There was a attack on one of my planets. If they won the encounter, they would win the game. So I instinctively put down a high number attack card. They put down a 40, they put down a 1. Right, won the encounter. Did win the encounter, but then they got to crash land, thus establishing a colony and winning the game. So those are the kind of things that can happen when you're playing Cosmic Encounter, and it's always really exciting. So yeah, I would recommend having Cosmic Encounter on your shelf. It may not be one that you play a lot. It's going to be a game that's going to take a long time to play, quite a while to set up and explain if there's any new players. So you may find you only play it occasionally with your more sort of hardcore tabletop gamers that are really into that sort of thing, compared to your light games or other games in your collection. But it's certainly one that's worthy of being on your gaming shelf. Well, I'm Tim. I hope you've enjoyed watching Tim Talks Tabletop. If you did like this video, please subscribe. If there's any games you'd like me to talk about, please leave a comment. I've got quite a vast games collection, but I'm also always looking for recommendations of things I should add. So it's the game I've got, I'll talk about it. If it's the game I don't have, I'll certainly look into it. Well, don't forget to subscribe, check out some of the playlists, and I hope to see you again soon.